We're now joined by CBS Sports NBA analysts Chris Walker, John Gonzalez after that bludgeoning from OKC to make their first trip to the finals since 2012. And guys, I'm not sure how much more you could ask of OKC in this one. A near perfect game, especially there in the first half. They managed to frustrate Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. Even in the first half with SGA on the bench, the team continued to stop on defense and score effectively on offense. Seawalk, after everything I just said, I want to know what impressed you most.
Listen, Kiana, we know you weren't born when the Supersonics won a championship, so this predates you a long time ago. But John may know a little bit, but I remember Dennis Johnson back in the day. But I'll say this, the game tonight, from the start of the game, you just knew it was going to be a tough one. I think Minnesota, and John may agree or disagree, they lost this game in Minnesota. They didn't even make the plane. They didn't make the flight from the Twin Cities. That 2-point loss at home, I believe they knew it was going to be very difficult to go back to the toughest home court arena in the NBA to win, particularly when it was a closeout game, and they just left it all on the table in Game 4. Game 3, magnificent, beat them by 42 points. You would think that they would fight, and they did fight, but they couldn't close the deal. And I'll say this, I don't know, and we'll talk further about it, what Minnesota does from here. It's 2 straight years losing in the Western Conference Final. Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, I'm just telling you, that team looked disjointed the entire series, along with Rudy Gobert. I didn't understand what his function was. They're missing some pieces for sure. They need an elite point guard. They need to do a little bit of something different because teams are ahead of them. I'm just upset, John, that this team beat my Lakers, because this would have been a much enjoyable series if Luka LeBron was playing, because they were no match for OKC.
Yeah, the league probably would have liked that. Going back to the Seattle thing, I was told by the league that the Seattle history doesn't count for Oklahoma City. Justice for Seattle, by the way, but we'll see whether or not Oklahoma City can get their own championship. Odds are looking really good right now. They were fantastic. I thought the Wolves were going to put up a bigger fight, Kiana and Chris, in this series. I had the Oklahoma City Thunder winning it, but by 7 games. And the Wolves, outside of the one game where they throttled Oklahoma City, really didn't show up in this. Yeah, sure, Ant and Julius looked okay stat-wise tonight, but they were basically no-shows for much of the series. And in the one game, in the last game that Chris was talking about, where they lose the game by 2 points in Minnesota, and that's when the series was a wrap, he was right about that. The rest of the team played really well in that game, and Ant and Julius Randle were no-shows. So that's going to be really disappointing for them, for this entire organization, for the Wolves not getting out of the Western Conference Finals for the 2nd year in a row. Look, you take the 6th seed, the Wolves, to the Western Conference Finals, that's a positive, right? But you don't get out of the Western Conference Finals again, and you're going to be doing a lot of thinking this offseason. But all credit to Oklahoma City, best team in the NBA during the regular season. Now they've run through a really difficult Western Conference. We'll see who they end up with in the finals. Looks like it's going to be the Pacers, but they're having a phenomenal season.
Yeah, I'll dive more into that in just a bit. But guys, we all know this was the #1 defense in the regular season, and that carried over into the playoffs. And they say that's what wins championships. But from what we've seen all the way up to the conference finals, John, just how much confidence, just what we've just seen, do you have in the Thunder's defense to maybe bring home their, you said, justice for Seattle, so their second championship in franchise history?
Yeah, however you want to parse it. I have a lot of confidence in Oklahoma City's defense. I mean, they've been fantastic. They can guard you at every level. I mean, just go through this. They have 2 guys who made all defense in Jalen Williams, his first nod, and Lou Dort on the perimeter, right? They can guard anybody on the wings. The 2 bigs, Chet Holmgren is a fantastic rim protector, as is Isaiah Hartenstein, who gives them that big physical presence and hits the glass really well. SGA, he plays at both ends. He's the MVP for a reason. He's also a fantastic defender. Now let's go to the bench. That bench, generally, when you get into the postseason, you end up shrinking your rotation a little bit, right? No need for Mark Dagnall and the Oklahoma City Thunder, because they've got Alex Caruso, they've got Kayson Wallace, who are fantastic defenders. You just go down the list with these guys. That defense was #1 with a bullet by a wide margin. It wasn't just like, oh, they were #1 and like it was a regular season. This is an all-time historic defense. They turn you over, and then they use those turnovers to generate offense. It's almost like an extra offensive player out there. Coming into this series, they were averaging something like 24 points per game off of turnovers, which is basically like a Steph Curry's worth of playoff points. Ridiculous defense.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what John was saying, man, you look at that bench. And here's the thing, guys. I remember watching the NCAA tournament, and they had a stat that said Auburn was almost as old as the OKC Thunder. the average age of the OKC Thunder is 24 years. Think about that. And you think about the juxtapose that with what the NBA is when they talk about experience and having a big three and all these stars. And now you got Mark Daigneault, a young coach who comes in with a young squad. They're connected, right? They have a great culture, and they have the other three. It's the 3 C's. They got chemistry, and that's what this team is doing, and they believe in each other. And you're right. Case and Wallace coming in. Caruso, a big pickup. Hartenstein, a big pickup. Give Sam Presti credit with the drafting, right? Also with bringing in the right free agents to mix in with the coach who has a different style, getting these young guys to play defense. This is a reason why they're the best team in the NBA. They have the best defense. They have the best player, and they're the youngest. So we might be seeing something a little bit different than what we've seen in the past of a big three. We just see what we call a big team, a team effort. And it's going to be hard for them. As I said, we'll talk about it in the next few seconds about who they'll play. But I love OKC. I'll be honest, guys. I was one of those guys that slept on them. And I said, well, when it gets to the Western Conference Finals, they'll play the Lakers or they'll play the Nuggets and they won't win. And they got it done. And they faced some adversity as well. So there was some growth there from one year to the next. You got to give this organization all the credit in the world. They've done it the right way, and now they're being rewarded by going to the finals.
Hey, you talk about being rewarded. Also, someone that was rewarded is SGA, earning the Western Conference Final MVP, finishing his night 34-7-8 in 34 minutes of play, and also averaging 32.7 points per game this series. But guys, you guys already alluded to it a little bit, but it's not final. But Pacers up 3-1 in their series, went away from their own trip to the finals. John, what's your way too early outlook on maybe this potential Pacers-Thunder matchup?
Yeah, if it's not the Pacers, it would be historic, right? Because there's only been 13 teams in NBA history who have come back from down 3-1. So apologies to my Knicks fan friends. I'm not actually that broken up about it, but Pacers, Oklahoma City would be a really good series. Look, the league probably isn't going to be that happy about it. Casuals might not be that happy about it because the ratings might not be very good. But in terms of the basketball, I said before we got to the conference finals that would maybe be the best series between the Pacers and Oklahoma City. I think they match up really well against each other. You have SGA, who's the MVP and now the Western Conference MVP as well. Well, Tyrese Halliburton on the other side, we just saw him put up a monster triple-double in this last game. I mean, he's been so good in these playoffs. They've hit so many game-winning shots, had so many comebacks, and then they're just like greater than the sum of their parts, right? They're really good when they're moving the ball and getting everybody involved. And Pascal Siakam, he's already won an NBA championship previously. Miles Turner, homegrown guy. They were always linked to maybe moving on from him. He's been really good. We saw Nesmith have some big moments. Nembhard, that bench with TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin had that big dunk. I actually think that this would be a gangbusters NBA Finals if these two, and it looks like they will be, meet for the championship.
John, you're right about this. Those Knicks fans are throwing bananas, they're throwing cans at the screen right now because you say they can't do what my guy LeBron did with the Cavaliers and coming back against the Warriors. But it goes to show you, as the OKC did to Minnesota tonight, how hard it is. How hard it is to find that intestinal fortitude and have that leadership, which I think Minnesota is missing. Even though I love a guy like Conley, a little bit older, they don't have the leadership. And Chris Finch and that group and Alex Gonzalez and the new guys that are taking over, they got to figure that out. But here's what I'll say with the next series. I was on a couple segments ago, and they said this is the best, I want to say maybe in 10 years, the finals, not necessarily the finals, but the playoffs or the viewership is up. It was a little bit worrisome during the year, but, during the playoffs, viewership was up. You know why? Because there's no stars. It's fresh. Right? And although I love the Knicks, they just play an ugly style. Wait till the last 5 minutes, rock fight, Jalen Brunson takes over, they thug it out and win it in the end. Indiana, it's must-see TV. Racers and Pacers. This is the series. Now think about it, it's two small markets, and John, I would agree with you that the NBA wants New York, of course, but I don't think it will disappoint because I'm telling you right now, this is a series I want to see. I want to see the MVP, right, go against the most exciting team in the NBA NBA that plays the highest pace in the Pacers, and you got 2 Olympians, SGA going against Halliburton, and it will be must-see TV. The other thing they got 2 great fan bases. It's going to be fun. I don't care what anyone says. Forget about LeBron. I love him. Forget about Giannis on the other side or the Celtics. I'm telling you right now, this series will be one of the best series we've seen in years.
Must-see TV. I like what you said about having some fresh faces, not those same people we see year in and year out. But also, guys, we get to see one of the top offenses in the association going head-to-head against one of the top defenses. So must-see TV, absolutely. But, guys, we have to acknowledge the Wolves' efforts here because people are saying that they came into this playing with house money, just 2 losses across their first 2 series. I mean, I know this one was vastly different, and I think that's a big credit to what we saw out of OKC. But you've got Anthony Edwards, superstar talent right there. John said it. They don't get out of the Western Conference Final again. Chris, I know you kind of brought it up a little bit, but what do you do this offseason that maybe helps raise Minnesota's ceiling? Because you mentioned needing an elite point guard, but there's got to be something else. Do you blow this up? Do you start small?
They got to look under the hood. Listen, you have a superstar in Anthony Edwards, but again, forget about looking at the stats. And John, you may disagree or agree, but the way they played him, it did not make him look good. I'm just being honest. And then not being able to and then getting to the end of the game and the pressers, I didn't get enough shots. Hey, man, listen, it is a chance to go to the finals. You don't get that many opportunities often. You are the superstar. You are the focal point. It starts with him. And then you bring Julius Randle and you get rid of Towns. You bring in Randle. And when it got the hottest, when the water got the hottest, to me, they both disappeared. That is a big deal. Now you got Naz Reid. You know, he was, again, as the series went on and the elevation and the temperature got hotter and hotter, these guys disappeared. I love Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but again, he's a role player coming off the bench who could leave them. So they really got to do some serious, long and hard thinking. They need an elite point guard. They need somebody come in that can make plays. The way they play is great, and it's good enough to get them to the Western Conference Finals. And being a 6th seed, it was only a few games that separated those teams, right, down the stretch. So 6th seed is a little bit different than the way it's characterized. The bottom line is, to get to the finals, they're going to have to do something different. And I'm not a great fan of Rudy Gobert. I think in today's game, as you saw in France with the Olympics, they benched him. He doesn't fit in today's game because he doesn't block shots and he does not protect the rim like he used to. They really have to blow this thing up, John, in my opinion.
Blow it up. Wow. Okay, they just made 2 straight Western Conference Finals. Chris is much more aggressive on this than I am, although I understand it. This season for them is sort of in the eye of the beholder, right? Because you could look at it and go, well, okay, there weren't a whole bunch of people who were picking them against the Lakers. They take care of the Lakers in 5. Second round, Golden State. If Steph hadn't gone down, there weren't going to be a whole lot of people who were going to take them to get out of that series either. They make it to the 2nd straight Western Conference Finals, and this time they do it as a 6th seed. That all sounds pretty good, but Chris was right that when it counted, when it mattered against the best team in basketball, Ant no-showed, Julius Randle no-showed for the most part. So this offseason, I'm less of a blow it up for a team that made the Western Conference Finals for 2 straight years. And an Anthony Edwards, who's going to continue to improve. He's so young. We forgot about how young this guy is. Then I am tinkering on the margins here, and we saw that graphic about the decisions that Tim Connelly, who's an excellent general manager, has to make this offseason because he's the architect, not just of this team, but of the Denver Nuggets team that won the championship. So I think that they look at it and go, all right, Julius Randle, have to decide what he's going to do with his player option. He's on the margins of does he pick it up or does he not. They want to retain Naz Reid, but that's going to be difficult because they're in apron hell, cap hell. See the graphic right there. Then Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He is a really interesting test case. At 27 years old, he's in line for probably a pretty big payday here, but will it be with the Wolves or will somebody else dangle something in front of him? And then Mike Conley. I love Mike Conley. One of the nicest guys in the NBA, but he was essentially useless in this series. So they absolutely need to replace him. So big time decisions for Tim Connelly this offseason, but he's one of a handful of general managers that I would trust the most to make the right decisions. And I definitely, Chris, I love you, would not blow this thing up.
Well, but let me just say this, John. You just mentioned 4 of the main guys that could all be gone. So whether they want to blow it up or not, it's getting blown up. The question question is, what are they going to do? And you did not mention Rudy Gobert. That's the other thing.
I'm always put in the position of being the Rudy Gobert defender, not whether on the pod or right here on HQ. He has his uses at times. He's not as maligned as, I mean, everybody loves to dunk on this guy, but like he made all defense again, right? Like, yes, at times in the playoffs, is he a matchup problem? Of course he is, but also he has his uses.
Whether you are a Rudy Gobert fan or not so much, like on the other side is Seawalk, they have some decisions that they'll have to make this offseason, but I think we're all in agreement that they got to find some support for Anthony Edwards and also Julius Randle, depending on that player option. But fellas, it's said and done. They're headed to the finals. Thunder, appreciate you guys stopping by with the insight. Well, if you want more where that came from, make sure you check out the Beyond the Arc podcast. John Gonzalez joined by Bill Ryder, diving into all of the storylines and analysis, heading into the finals. And don't forget, we still waiting to see what happens out in the East. Make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.